Hello, our class is called Information Literacy and College Success. We've already talked some about college success, so today we're going to do our introduction to information literacy. So this definition from the Society of College, National, and University Libraries talks about what it means to be an information literate person. So by the end of this course, hopefully you'll fit this definition. You will be able to demonstrate an awareness of how you gather, use, manage, synthesize, and create information and data in an ethical manner, and you'll have the information skills to do this effectively. That's the big goal of our class, to help you be able to use information. So why do we study information literacy? Why do we have a whole course about this here at HCC? One of the main reasons is because there is so much information today, right? We are at an information overload in our society, more than ever before. So for that reason, it really becomes more difficult to manage the information. You would think that life would be easier with so much information, but because there's so much, it's a lot to wade through and a lot to make sure that you can believe the information. And so we need to study information. Being an information literate person means that you'll be able to make informed decisions, right? You'll be able to do the research you need, and that will make you an informed citizen. So if we think about the citizens of our country, we want people voting who understand what the issues are, who have done a little research, who know what the candidates are and what they stand for. And so knowing information literacy will make you an informed citizen. And being information literate means that you are practicing critical thinking. You're using your own mind to look at data, to make inferences about the data, to make decisions using that data. Information literacy is going to help you in your day-to-day life, in your academic life, as you use and find information. And if that all isn't enough to convince you, then I'll go the career track and say also that employers want and expect their employees to be information literate, to be good critical thinkers, to be able to look and research and get data and make informed decisions. So, what is information literacy? What you see on the screen in this circle are the 7 pillars of information literacy. Again, this is from that society, SCONAL or whatever they're called, the Society of Librarians. Information literacy is generally housed in higher education in libraries because they are the ones who gather and kind of collect all the information for other people to use. And so they're very involved with information literacy. And so this library association has these 7 different pillars of information literacy. Looking at them another way, you'll see what they are, right? Identify, being able to understand that you need information, assessing what you already know and figuring out what you need to know, planning, making strategies for how you're going to get this data, and then actually getting the information and data that you need. Once you have those sources, evaluating them to determine if they are both reliable and if they're going to be good sources for the information you need. Organizing this information into some format, right? For us in English, it's generally a paper or a presentation, but it could be, a spreadsheet, anything else, managing that information. And then finally, presenting this information. And I'll say not just presenting it because that makes it sound like you're going to do a presentation. Presenting it can also mean just however you're going to use that information. So here's an example of the research process, maybe from your own life, or I guess more accurately from my own life, right? I was with my parents last weekend and they're talking about buying a new car. Both my parents are in their 80s, and so they don't really understand all the bells and whistles of new cars. And we're frankly kind of nervous about getting them a new car because we're worried that they're not going to understand things like push button start and things like that. But nevertheless, they want a new car. So we have the question about what is going to be the best car for them to get. So I can think about my scope. What do I know already about this issue and what do I need to know? So I know that my parents want a hatchback type of car. They've had SUVs, but now they feel like that's hard to get in and out of. So they want something lower, but they still like to maybe haul some stuff around. So they want a hatchback. Not too many bells and whistles, and probably about a mid-level price to a low price. They're pretty frugal. So my plan to find out about cars for them is, of course, just do a Google search to see what kind of cars they might recommend. And then go to sites like Carvana or Cars.com to get an idea about how much the kind of cars that I find might cost. and maybe with my parents go to a couple dealerships, maybe someplace like CarMax that has a lot of used cars available so they can just see a lot of types of cars because they're not really sure exactly what they want. All right, so then it'll be time for me to gather, to do the search, to go on the visits to the sites. And once I do that, then I can evaluate the different types of cars. I can think about the dealer's offers, maybe make a pro-con list once we narrow it down to maybe a couple different kinds of cars that we think they're interested in. And so how would I manage this data? I could create a spreadsheet for my parents with the different cars and deals, or I could just write it down on paper. Frankly, for my parents, they're not going to be impressed that I did it on an Excel spreadsheet. And then, of course, I'll talk with my parents, help them make a choice, and work with them to buy a car. All right, so that's the research process in real life. So now you might be thinking, oh, if that's the research process, I guess I do that all the time, right? How will it might work in an academic setting? All right, so I'm going to use an example of something that you might look at in this class when we look at college success. So when we identify, we start usually with a question from some kind of inquiry. And so one of the issues we're going to look at is thinking about our Howard Pride. And that is geared towards helping make Black males successful in college. So the question about why are they less successful in the first place? Okay, so that is the question. What do I know about this issue already? I know that at HCC we have Howard Pride to assist our Black male students. Many schools have similar programs to this. So I know that it's a nationwide issue and I want to learn more. All right, so my plan would be to investigate Howard Pride on the HCC website. I could even do interviews perhaps, but also I know I'm going to need to do a library search to start looking for what are the reasons behind Black males being less successful in college and maybe evidence that proves that they really are. So I'll go to our library database in terms of gathering, and you'll learn about how to do that in this class, and then also maybe get help from librarians with my search. Once I find all the articles, I'll assess them whether they are credible and good for my topic. Remember, I can find an article that's a great article, but it doesn't necessarily fit my research. So I need to evaluate them in terms of what I'm trying to do. Then to manage all the information I have, I'll create a works cited page. Maybe I'll highlight the articles that are particularly good and leave the ones that I might not use unhighlighted. And then think about, in our class, we're eventually going to do a presentation. And so managing information, I might think about how it's going to fit into an outline of my presentation. And then finally, I'll create my PowerPoint and record my presentation. So that's what it looks like, the research process looks in an academic setting. Now, I just showed you one kind of the 7 pillars from one library organization. There's another organization, the Association of College and Resource Libraries, and they see this the framework for information literacy a little bit differently. So instead of kind of having the how-tos, I'll come back to them here, this kind of walks you through how to do information literacy. The ACRL, the Association of College and Research Libraries, they look at more the core concepts of information literacy. What does, like the definition we saw at the beginning, what does an information literate person understand? And here's a quote from them. Students have a greater role and responsibility in creating new knowledge, in understanding the contours and the changing dynamics of the world of information, and in using information data and scholarship ethically. Right? So that's for them why it's important for you as students to be information literate. So let me share with you their frames. Okay, these are just in alphabetical order, but you see at the end I put in parentheses kind of how they relate to the different pillars that we've already looked at, right? So when we talk about the fact that authority is constructed and contextual, that means we're looking at evaluating the source, right? We're seeing who it comes from, who has the authority to tell us about this, or do they have the authority to tell us about this, to write about it in the first place. The second one, information creation as a process, right? So we've just seen that, the 7 pillars, that is a process. The ACRL talks about it as being an iterative process. Okay, that means going through many iterations, many changes along the way. When you're looking for information, it's not always as simple as a Google search, right? It might be like using the example of my parents in a car. It might be we start out with this broad idea, we get it narrowed down to 2 cars, maybe we narrow it down to 1 car, and then the research process changes to getting quotes from dealers and trying to find out how to get that particular car that we want. So the process is kind of changing as we go through the research. Information has value. Okay, so when we talk about this, we know we're identifying the scope, the plan, the gathering the information. We're doing that because the information has value. This has never been more true than in today's world, right? We can see the value in information because people actually sell big data, right? They are always looking at what we're doing, and that information is used to sell us things, to convince us of things, to even sway elections, right? So information has value. If research is inquiry, this is the identify stage. That's where we start from, is we have some kind of question, some reason for researching. While you're researching, I want you to think of being in conversation, right? You have a question, you want to be kind of talking, I'm putting air quotes, talking to your sources. You want to see how they work together, how one source works with another source. Do they agree? Do they disagree? How does that work with what you believe, what you already know, the scope of information that you have? And so I want you to think of it as this kind of conversation that you're having or you're seeing among the sources. Finally, the last one is searching as a strategic exploration, right? And that kind of goes along with it being a process and one that could change as it goes along. So that kind of fits with the M part of the 7, the scope, the plan, the gather, the evaluate. That we're strategically exploring something and we can change that as we move along. So why do I even tell you about these ACRL frames? Because I want you also to think about the information differently, not just being, things that you do, but I think the ACRL frames help you to see it in a different way. Most important, I want you to be able to evaluate your work and the work of others from a different perspective. And this kind of relates to something you'll be doing in 121 over here, the rhetorical triangle, right? Anything you read, thinking about who is it who wrote this information? Who is it? What was their purpose in writing it? And who was it intended for, right? So we want to know, are they trying to convince somebody? Are they just want to inform somebody? That way we can make sure that maybe we're not manipulated by whatever message is being presented to us. You'll learn more about that in English 121, but I think that information literacy sets you up for being able to have those skills. All right, I think that's our introduction to information literacy. If you're interested in really diving deep and looking more, I have the citations for both the SCONO, the University Library Systems, and the College Research Libraries, the ACRL, information here for you. All right, thanks.